Joke lovers of Reddit, what's a great joke? Please consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. When I'm talking with my Hispanic friends I use the word mucho, it means a lot to them. There once was a man in Guam who loved driving trains. He had done it all his life, and he intended to continue. One day, he drove his train a little too fast and ended up killing someone on the tracks. He went to court for it and was given the death sentence. He ate a single banana for his last meal, and he was off to the chair. When the executioner flipped the switch, sparks flew, smoke rose, but the man was fine. Well, at the time in Guam, a failed execution was considered divine intervention and he was set free. Somehow, he got his old job driving trains back, and the same week ran over someone else. He was tried once again and was found guilty once again. This time, however, he had 2 bananas for his last meal. Again, sparks flew, smoke rose, but he was fine. He survived the chair again and was set free, surprising no one. The next month he had killed someone else with the train. This time, for his last meal he asked for 3 bananas. The judge said enough of the bananas, just send him to the chair. The man said the bananas had nothing to do with it. I'm just a bad conductor. Dave was bragging to his boss one day. You know, I know everyone there is to know. Just name someone, anyone. And I know them. Tired of his boasting, his boss called his bluff. Okay, Dave, how about Tom Cruise? No dramas, boss. Tom and I are old friends, and I can prove it. So Dave and his boss fly out to Hollywood and knock on Tom Cruise's door, and Tom Cruise shouts, Dave, what's happening? Great to see you. Come on in for a beer. Although impressed, Dave's boss is still skeptical. After they leave Cruise's house, he tells Dave that he thinks him knowing Cruise was just lucky. No, just name anyone else. Dave says, President Obama. His boss quickly retorts, yup. Dave says, old buddies, let's fly out to Washington, and off they go. At the White House, Obama spots Dave on the tour and motions him and his boss over, saying, Dave, what a surprise. I was just on my way to a meeting, but you and your friend come on in and let's have a beer first and catch up. Well, the boss is very shaken by now, but still not totally convinced. After they leave the White House grounds he expresses his doubts to Dave, who again implores him to name anyone else. Pope Francis. His boss replies, sure, says Dave, I've known the Pope for years. So off they fly to Rome. Dave and his boss are assembled with the masses at the Vatican St. Peter's Square when Dave says, this will never work. I can't catch the Pope's eye among all these people. Tell you what, I know all the guards so let me just go upstairs and I'll come out on the balcony with the Pope. He disappears into the crowd headed towards the Vatican. Sure enough, half an hour later Dave emerges with the Pope on the balcony, but by the time Dave returns, he finds that his boss has had a heart attack and is surrounded by paramedics, making his way to his boss' side. Dave asks him, what happened? His boss looks up and says, it was the final straw. You and the Pope came out onto the balcony and the man next to me said, who the frick is that on the balcony with Dave? A person is walking down the street and hears a bunch of people in a fenced-in yard shouting, 19, 19, 19, 19. Curious, he walks over and looks through a hole in the fence. Someone from the other side pokes him in the eye and they all start shouting 20, 20, 20. At a construction site, a construction worker is working on the 5th floor. He needs a saw but the nearest one is on the 1st floor. He tries asking his colleague on the 1st floor to pass it to him, but he can't hear him. The guy on the 5th floor decides to use actions. He points to himself, meaning I. He then points to his knee, meaning need. He then makes a back and forth sawing motion, referring to the saw. The guy on the 1st floor nods his head, and promptly whips out his dick and starts masturbating. The guy on the 5th floor sees this and is so pissed. He runs all the way down and yells at his colleague, what the hell is wrong with you? All I did was ask you for the saw. The guy on the 1st floor says, I know. I was just trying to tell you that I'm coming. 2 boys are taking a stroll through the woods. When they come across this well, they take a look down the well, and can't see the bottom. They want to know how long the drop is so one of them throws a pebble down there. They wait a while, nothing. They spot a good-sized rock and toss it down the well next. They wait a while, still nothing. They look around and spot an engine block. They both push the heavy engine block into the well. They wait a while, then bang. A loud crash is heard. Right when they are about to move on through the woods, a goat comes sprinting past them and dives into the well. While looking at each other and down the well in shock, a farmer runs up to them. Excuse me, I left my goat around here. Do you know where it went? Your goat's crazy, sir. One of the boys starts explaining. It sprinted and dived into this well here. The farmer looked at the boys, puzzled. But that's impossible. I tied it to an engine block. An Oklahoma State trooper pulls over a circus clown for speeding. The trooper asks the clown, why were you driving so fast? The clown says, I'm headed to Tulsa for a circus show and I don't want to be late. The trooper asks the clown, what do you do in the show? I'm a juggler, says the clown. Alright, says the trooper, if you juggle for me here, I won't give you a ticket. The clown says, I don't have my equipment. It got sent ahead of me. The trooper says excitedly, I've got some flares in the back of my car. As the clown begins juggling the flares on the side of the road, a good old boy, drunk off his ass, pulls in behind the trooper to witness the spectacle. After watching for a few minutes, the man then climbs into the back seat of the squad car. The trooper, having never seen a man arrest himself before, walks over to the man and asks, what are you doing, son? The man says, you may as well take me to jail now, cause I ain't gonna pass that test. A cowboy walks into a bar. He gets a few drinks and settles up with the bartender. He walks out to find his horse is missing. He walks back into the bar, whips out his pistol and fires into the ceiling. He says, which one of you idiots stole my horse? No one answered. Then he says, if my horse ain't back by the time I finish another drink, I'm gonna have to do what I did back in Texas. And I don't like to do what I done back in Texas. He has a drink and walks back outside. His horse is back where it used to be. As he was mounting up, the bartender walks out and asks, hey partner, what did you have to do in Texas? I had to walk home, answered the cowboy. Two guys are walking down the street and come across this dog licking his balls. One guy says to the other man, I wish I could do that. The other guy responds, maybe you should pet him first. I'm hosting a charity event for people who have trouble ejaculating. If you can't come, let me know. A guy went up to a food truck and the sign says fries $3, burgers $5, handjobs $10. He goes to the counter and there's a gorgeous blonde woman working there. He asks her, are you the one who gives the hand jobs? She says, I sure am, and winks. He replies, well, wash your hands cause I want a burger and fries. What's the difference between a good joke and a bad joke timing? I bought the world's worst thesaurus yesterday. Not only is it terrible, it's also terrible. Q. How many narcissists does it take to screw in a light bulb? A. 1. He holds the bulb while the world revolves around him. Say what you want about deaf people. Do you know the difference between a rectal and an oral thermometer? The taste. A middle-aged man and his wife are playing golf when she starts talking about what would happen if she suddenly died. I'd want you to get remarried and be happy. She says, I'd want you to take her golfing like we are today. You could even give her my golf clubs. Oh, I wouldn't do that. He responds, she's left-handed. A man was late to the cannibal party. He got the cold shoulder. My wife got really mad at the fact I have no sense of direction, so I packed up my stuff and right. A woman, tired of living alone, decides to put an ad in the local paper. She asks for 3 things. 1. A man who will treat her nicely. 2. A man who won't leave her. And 3. A man who is well endowed and great in bed. Several weeks go by without a result, and the woman is resigned to life without a man who can embody those qualities. Then, the doorbell rings and she opens it to find an armless, legless man in a wheelchair. He says, I'm here about the ad in the paper. As you can see, I have no arms, so I can't beat you, and I have no legs, so I can't run away from you. The woman is skeptical, and asks, yeah, but are you good in bed? The man answers, how do you think I rang the doorbell? I got these new shoes from a drug dealer. I don't know what they're laced with, but I've been tripping all day. You know why blind people don't jump out of airplanes? It scares the dog. A man was at his friend's funeral and asked the wife if he could say a word. She agreed. The man stood at the podium and said, plethora. As he sat back down, the wife said, thanks. That means a lot. What do you call a psychic midget who escaped prison? A small medium at large. I like dad jokes, but I don't have any kids. I guess that makes me a faux pas. A Holocaust survivor goes to heaven and meets God. He tells God a Holocaust joke. God says, that's not funny at all. The survivor says, guess you had to be there. Why was the bouncy castle so expensive? Due to the cost of inflation. What are the strongest days of the week? Saturday and Sunday, the rest are weekdays. A man walks into a crowded bar on a Friday night, and there's a big commotion going on. Curious, He walks into the crowd and tries to find what is so exciting. Looking up, he sees several pieces of meat hanging from the ceiling. Even more curious now, but also rather thirsty, he works his way to the bartender. The man asks the bartender, "Why are there pieces of meat hanging from the ceiling?" The bartender grins. He replies, "We have a special going on right now. If you can jump up and hit all of the pieces hanging, then you'll earn free drinks for the rest of the night. However, if you miss even one, the entire bar's drinks are on your tab for the next hour. Do you want to give it a try?" The man looked up again, weighing the odds. "No thanks. The stakes are too high." What's the difference between a dirty bus stop and a lobster with breast implants? One is a crusty bus station. The other is a busty crustacean. A bunch of books fell on my head this morning. I've only got my shelf to blame. Did you know you can't run through a campground? You can only ran, 'cause it's past tense. This one is a long one, but one of my all-time favorites and a classic. A businessman is getting ready to go on a long business trip. He knows his wife is always horny, so he decides to get her something to keep her occupied while he was gone, because he didn't much like the idea of her screwing someone else. So he went to a store that sold sex toys and started looking around. He thought about a life-sized sex doll, but that was too close to another man for him. He was browsing through the dildos, looking for something special to please his wife, and started talking to the old man behind the counter. He explained his situation to the old man. "Well, I don't really know of anything that will do the trick. We have vibrating dildos, special attachments, and so on, but I don't know of anything that will keep her occupied for weeks." "Except her," said the old man, and then he stopped. "Except what?" asked the businessman. "Nothing, nothing," said the old man. "Come on, tell me. I need something," protested the businessman. "Well, sir, I don't usually mention this, but there is the voodoo dildo," the old man said. "The voodoo dildo?" the businessman asked. The old man reached under the counter and pulled out an old wooden box carved with strange symbols. He opened it, and there lay a very ordinary-looking dildo. The businessman laughed and said, "Big freaking deal. It looks like every other dildo in this shop," the old man said, "but you haven't seen what it'll do yet." He pointed to a door and said, "Voodoo dildo." The voodoo dildo rose out of its box, darted over to the door, and started screwing the keyhole. The whole door shook with the vibrations, and a crack developed down the middle. Before the door could split, the old man said, "Voodoo dildo. Box." The voodoo dildo stopped, floated back to the box and lay there, motionless. The businessman said, "I'll take it." The guy took it home to his wife, told her it was a special dildo and that to use it, all she had to do was say, "Voodoo dildo. My pussy." He left for his trip satisfied things would be fine while he was gone. After he'd been gone a few days, the wife was unbearably horny. She thought of several people who would willingly satisfy her, but then she remembered the voodoo dildo. She lay down, placed the box between her legs, and said, "Voodoo dildo. My pussy." The voodoo dildo shot to her crotch and started pumping. It was great, like nothing she'd ever experienced before. After 3 orgasms, she decided she'd had enough, and tried to pull it out, but it was stuck in her, still thrusting. She tried and tried to get it out, but nothing worked. Her husband had forgot to tell her how to shut it off, so she decided to go to the hospital to see if they could help. She put her clothes on, got in the car and started to drive to the hospital, quivering with every thrust of the dildo. On the way, another orgasm nearly made her swerve off the road, and she was pulled over by a policeman. He asked for her license, and then asked how much she'd had to drink. Gasping and twitching, she explained that she hadn't been drinking, but that a voodoo dildo was stuck in her pussy, and wouldn't stop screwing her. The officer looked at her for a second, and then said, "Yeah, right, voodoo dildo. My ass." Stand-up comic. "I was walking here this afternoon and saw a sperm bank. The sign on the front said $50 per specimen. $50. I wish somebody would have told me sooner. There's a shirt under my bed worth $17,000. What's green? Furry and can kill you if it falls from a tree. A pool table. Why did the blind man fall in the well? He didn't see that well. What's blue and smells like red paint? Blue paint. Why do elephants paint their toenails red? So they can hide in cherry trees. Have you ever seen an elephant in a cherry tree? See, it works. It's kind of long, but it's good if I remember it correctly. 3 men were stranded in the desert and were found by a tribe and got took in. The tribe's leader told them they had 10 minutes to go find 10 fruit in the nearby forest. They leave to try and find the fruit. After 10 minutes, the first man comes back with 10 apples. The leader then told him to shove them all up his ass without showing emotion. He tries and gets the first one in but is struggling. He tries to put the second one in but shows emotion and is shot to death by arrows. The second man gets back with 10 grapes and is told to do the same thing. He is finding it very easy and is getting it done fairly quickly and gets to the 7th one, until he burst out laughing, and is shot to death. He sees the first man in heaven and he is asking why. Why did you laugh? You were so close. The second man said, I was finding it pretty easy, until I saw the third man walking up with pineapples. Please subscribe if you like the video. It really helps the channel to grow. Adios.